You drink ayahuasca, and suddenly the life that you have been building for decades with studies, work, relationships, and an identity collapses in a moment. Because suddenly you see a new truth of who you are and what you're capable of, and the life that you now have cannot hold the one that you see you are becoming. Maybe you've touched your life's calling, your authentic spiritual energy, and you see a deeper truth of what you are, and everything that is not aligned with this truth now starts to fall away. The ceremony ends, but you know that the real work just began. This might feel like your identity is breaking, but it's simply breaking free into a truer and more aligned and alive version of yourself. And that is what this episode is for. You will learn what a new reference point is and the 5 common reference points that we meet on this journey that can rock the foundation of your life and your spirit, and what we can do to integrate them into one masterpiece of wholeness instead of more fragmentation. I'll also share the most difficult integration homework Aya has ever given me when she delivered me the mother of all new reference points towards who I felt I was scared of, and how I could transform it, including going home to my home country to confront a previous foster family where I suffered immense abuse. This is a very important episode because if you drink the sacred medicine of ayahuasca and you are on this path, you will experience all of these reference points. And in a research, up to 60% said that they went into the ceremony as non-believers in spirit or God, only to see themselves as spiritual afterwards. So these reference points, they are powerful, they are real, and they usually happen within every single retreat where we get to experience the grandmother ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, curandera, es espíritu de abuela, es mi alma, es mi guía, camino con luz, pasería. Ayahuasca, curandera, es espíritu de abuela, es mi alma, es mi guía, camino con luz, pasería.
Ayahuasca has a way of showing you, sometimes within just one retreat, that who you are is not who you truly are. You see suddenly very clearly that the identity you have been living from is already falling behind the person you are becoming. She gives you a new reference point, and once that reference point is there, it begins to move everything. Your career starts to look different. The people that you used to connect with begin to change. The direction of your life path quietly or drastically starts to shift. And for most of us walking this path, this moment has already happened, even if we don't have the language for it right now. And when this happened, the plant of ayahuasca takes us so deep into the heart and so deep into our soul that we begin to realize how little our education or our professional identity actually touch who we are at the core. Not because it was wrong or a waste of time, but because it was built from a place that no longer match who we are becoming. Something starts to move and a different path begins to reveal itself. Not as something that we planned or designed, but as something that is being shown through us and lived through us. We don't get to choose it because it chooses us. And this episode is devoted to that realization and to the integration that follows when we discover that who we are becoming is not who we were. And there is a lot of excitement in that discovery, but also there can be grief and fear and confusion. We are called onto a path where the old tools and instruments we have no longer work, or where these instruments we relied on no longer have the same purpose or produce the same sound. And where we have to learn a new way of being in order to live the calling and the purpose that we feel stirring inside of us. And to help you develop a language that has helped me a lot is to know what a reference point is when we do this medicine work. A reference point is not just something that happens in the mind. It doesn't live in one layer. It can land spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, and very often it lands in more than one place at the same time. Sometimes it comes as a spiritual recognition that rearranges how you relate to existence itself. And yet sometimes it comes as an emotional truth that settles in the body and won't leave. Other times as a physical knowing that changes how you breathe and how you move. and how you hold yourself in the world. And other times is a mental clarity that suddenly reorganizes your entire story about who you are and why your life unfolded the way it did. A reference point isn't something you think yourself into. It's just something that lands within you. Maybe as a child you believed in Santa Claus, like me. And when you're a child and you believe in Santa, it's not just a thought, right? It organizes your excitement, your imagination, your expectations, even how your body feels on Christmas morning. And then one day you understand that Santa is not real. Not because someone convinced you with the logic, but because you saw behind it. And from that moment you can remember what it felt like to believe. You can even play along, but you cannot truly go back. The belief no longer holds the reality together in the same way. And a reference point works like this in our adult life as well. Once it arrives, it changes what feels believable, what feels possible, and what feels false across your entire system. You might still remember how you used to see the world and yourself, and you might even be able to perform that version of yourself for a while, but internally, something has already moved. That's why reference points aren't reversible through willpower or discipline. You can't ignore them, but yet you can delay responding to them and integrating them. You can try to build a life that pretends they didn't happen, but you can't return to who you were before because your body knows, your emotion knows, your nervous system knows, and often your spiritual orientation has already adjusted. And this is where integration comes in, a reference point. It doesn't demand that you change your life overnight. It doesn't give you also a set of instructions. What it does is it quietly changes what you are capable of living with. And over time, that gap between who you are living and what you know starts to feel uncomfortable, heavy, and even unbearable. And if you know that feeling, I want to share with you the first time ayahuasca gave me a reference point that truly shifted how I was going to live the rest of my life. If you've done ayahuasca, you have also come into ceremony with the question, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? What is it that I am here on this earth to become? And I was in ceremony holding space for 20 clients together with shamans from the Putumayo that I worked with closely over 10 years. And that night I asked a question that came from a really deep place. I asked ayahuasca, what am I here on earth to do or to be? And she responded really quickly, teacher. And my reaction was such a relief. My sister is a teacher for children. I love teachers. Teachers have the potential not only to change one life, but an entire generation. And I remember thinking how beautiful that felt to be a teacher. I thought, yes, I would love to be a teacher. That feels right. And then I asked the next question, which I should not have asked. What am I here to teach? And the answer came instantly with her voice. Respect. And I resisted immediately. No, please, not respect. Can I pick another one? Can I pick self-love or love to animals? But there was no answer. And it reminded me of the saying we often say in ayahuasca ceremonies, you get what you need, not always what you want. Because this silence, it just stayed with me. And in this silence, something was planted, a seed that I didn't understand at that time, but one I slowly began to orient my life around. And over many years, ayahuasca kept returning to the same lesson and word, respect, revealing it layer by layer. I began to see that respect was not only something I was here to offer others, it was something I was here to learn for myself. Because you can only be a teacher for what you are and for what you have embodied yourself. I had to learn how to respect my own gifts, my voice, my truth, my body, my boundaries. To learn to honor myself in spaces where I had learned to abandon myself. She also showed me that this teaching went beyond this lifetime, that respect towards others had been forgotten before, that I had hurt people in past lifetimes, and that this path was not just about standing as a teacher for others, but about taking this medicine fully, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, and ancestrally, in every dimension of my life. And only then, slowly and naturally, allow this energy to move into the work that I do, as overflow of who I am, and not as an unintegrated package I wanted to sell or share with others. Another time ayahuasca showed me a new reference point was in a very different way. Many years later, I was led into the most difficult integration journey of my life. And this time, ayahuasca gave me a quest and a challenge that would take me years of courage to actually dare to enter. For with so many years with ayahuasca, I went into ceremony and the focus was to heal the trauma that I experienced as a child. And every ceremony would be like a different age and time of my childhood. I started off being just a toddler. Eventually I was 5, eventually I was 7, eventually I was 10. And it felt like being reparented by ayahuasca and moving through every single memory and every single trauma that I had experienced to release it. But eventually, almost all of this trauma was transformed. And still I was scared. Scared of the people that once hurt me, even though now I was a big man, a muscular man, a man who had a proud and loud voice who could protect himself. But still there was this fear of meeting these people that once hurt me in childhood. And ayahuasca showed me that even though I had released the inner walls, the outer walls were still there. I still had a fear. I still was as fearful as the child that once were hurt, living in this body of a man. And the only way to transform this was to go and confront this family that once had given me great harm. Because even though I could expand my inner world and heal internally and grow my inner capacity, I also had to do the outer work. Because if I did all this inner work and returned to the same outer life, the walls around me would still be just as closed on the outside, just as tight, just as suffocating as before. And then I was not just integrating, I was not expanding this outer reality. The inner work and the outer work had to be integrated and come together, because my inner world becomes my outer world. And if not, my inner walls could be liberated only to find myself imprisoned by my outer walls. This is why I many times meet people who do this great healing and liberation on the inside, but they're scared of speaking that truth and service into this world. And this for me was a level of difficulty that I did not want to meet. I did not want to go back to Norway. I did not want to confront the family that had nearly taken my life. And yet something in me knew that this was a part of the work. There was nothing in me that wanted to go back because the abuse had been so horrific. And when I shared this quest with my healing coach at that time, her reaction was very strong. She told me, do not go back there. Do not contact these people. Do you really expect that people who've hurt you in the past are going to heal you in the future? Stop it, David, she told me. And she also told me, don't listen to ayahuasca. She's wrong. And in that moment, I knew that this was not the teacher for me because I trusted ayahuasca. And I understand that most people would never comprehend why on earth you would return to a country and try to connect with a family who abused you in childhood. I understood that this choice would not make sense to anyone from the outside. But there was a deeper truth moving inside of me. And it was a reference point to my own liberation. It was a deeper need that had nothing to do with logic. And also there was the trust in my teacher ayahuasca that I can't explain in a rational way because I trust ayahuasca with my life. And that was the moment I ended that coaching relationship because I knew I could not outsource this decision. I had to consciously make this decision for myself. And I knew after many years of therapy, after many years of healing with ayahuasca, that I had healed this on the inside and I could finally confront it on the outside. I did not start the journey with going to confront the family where I had not healed and transformed these wounds on my inside, because then that meeting would have been a meeting of hate and anger and blame. And I knew also that this was my path to walk and nobody can walk it for me. So I followed this request that ayahuasca kept bringing me, even though a part of me was terrified. In this journey, she also asked me to let go of everything that I had, to let go of my identity as a very successful coach, to stop working, to stop defining myself through achievements and money and productivity, to stop placing my sense of self into my things. And this was so painful for me. I had built such an identity around being this gay man with a successful coaching career. And since that identity created safety and money, I didn't want to lose it. I had invested so much of my time and energy into this identity, my sense of worth into it. I'd surrounded myself with beautiful things and luxury brands, objects that carried status and safety. And ayahuasca asked me to let it all go. And I remember one time going down to the street in Barcelona, laying some of these beautiful boxes out on one of the garbage bins, hoping that some lucky person would find them. And then a man came walking down the street with a trolley full of metal scraps. And he noticed one of these beautiful boxes on the garbage bin, and he stopped and opened the box and lifted out this beautiful Gucci silk scarf and held it up and just looked at it in disbelief and threw it behind him into the mud and kept walking. I remember standing in my doorway watching, feeling a surge of disbelief. And I thought, how could you do that? That scarf cost hundreds of euros. And then something in me just cracked open and I started laughing because the value had never been real. It had only existed in the story I had told myself about who I was. Those things did not form my identity. They did not form my worth. And in that moment, I could let that part of the journey finally end. And eventually, when my apartment was empty in Barcelona and it was only me and the magnolia tree outside my terrace blooming, I sat on the floor in an empty apartment, decided it's time to order that one-way ticket back to Norway and meet this family that I was scared of meeting. So going back to Christmas, I said that I needed to stay a little bit longer, and I stayed in the cabin next to the house where I grew up. And I started writing on my book, and I began researching who in my foster family who was still alive. And strangely, they were all on Facebook, literally just a click away. They had been there the entire time. Even my foster dad, who I thought was dead and was so abusive, he was sitting there with 7 friends on Facebook. And I started writing to all of them. Do you remember me? I need to have a conversation. And at first there was just silence. And then I freaked out and I blocked everyone. And eventually I got a message from one of the sisters that I had in that family a long time ago when I was 2 to 5 years old. And together with my sister, we drove to meet them in the nearby city. And in that meeting, something happened that I had never experienced before in my life. For the first time, my memories were validated. The childhood I thought had been so insane and so dark and so unreal was validated and confirmed as real. I hadn't imagined it. It was completely true. And in that moment, I found words for the pain that the child in me never could speak. I could name the story. I could say what happened. And I stood there as a proud adult and said the things that had been trapped in silence for decades. I felt like this saved dad had finally come home to Norway to protect that child that I was that didn't have any protectors. And I stood in front of that inner child and said to him, you were right, you survived something no child should ever survive, and I'm here with you, and I'm here to share your story with you, and I'm here to show you that it's safe to be you now. Not just on the inside, but also on the outside. You can share your truth now. And I could feel my inner child soften. I could feel him relax. I could feel him finally feel protected. And then very suddenly, something just released. It was as if this entire chapter of my childhood just let go at once. I didn't need any more healing there. I didn't need to keep working on it. I was so done. And I realized that when you are truly ready to let go of something, it's over. In this meeting with these 2 sisters, they asked me if I had a message to my foster dad. And I remember feeling the part of me that would have spoken before I started the ayahuasca journey, who would have told them to tell him to go somewhere not nice, and that would have been filled with rage and anger. But now, after this spiritual healing journey with ayahuasca, I knew that we were all on the same journey and that eventually we would all come home. And that one day, I would be standing in a gate somewhere in the spiritual realm and wait for him to come back home, and I would be giving him a big hug. Because to forget your light and to spread so much darkness and pain means that the journey home is just longer. So when they asked me what message I wanted to share with him, I also knew that in childhood, his goal was to destroy my light, to make me as dark and angry and hateful as him. And I knew that he hadn't succeeded, that I had found my light, that I had found my power, that I had found my voice, and that he didn't win. His goal was to break me and to make me forget my light, and he had done the opposite. So I said to them, tell him that I'm not a man of hate or anger, that I'm filled with love, that I'm filled with happiness, and that I don't have any anger towards him whatsoever, because I know that's what he wants me to be like, and he didn't succeed. And it felt so good to release that hatred and anger, and to rather see him as a very difficult and challenging teacher to help me find my own light, and the light that I never lost and can never lose. And that was probably the most difficult integration exercise ayahuasca ever given me. And within a few months of returning home to Spain, my heart was just so open. There was space finally. It was like I'd been carrying this luggage with me my entire life that was so heavy. And now I was free. There was lightness. Songs started coming to me that felt so beautiful, they made me cry. Love came into my life, and everything felt alive and aligned. And joy was there when I woke up in the morning and when I went to bed, as if I had never been traumatized a day in my life. My inner walls had slowly been taken down, and now the outer walls were also removed. And I was free to move within me and outside of me. And life began to blossom in ways I didn't even know were possible for me. And it wasn't something I forced or planned, it just started to open on its own. And it was during this time ayahuasca showed me a deeper layer of my truth. I was lying on the floor, deeply connected to the medicine. And then she took me into my own heart, to be fully embodied in my heart, not just to see or feel it, but to experience it from the inside. I realized from the deepest place in my being that I'm an artist. And people use that word all the time, and maybe it doesn't mean that much to you. But for me, it wasn't a word. It was a part of my identity that I desperately wanted to adopt. It was a calling, like a lifelong calling that I could suddenly reorganize because I was standing inside of it. It felt like I could see the melody of my soul, and that melody was purely artistic. And I could feel how out of tune I had been with the instrument of my own heart for so long, trying to play something that was never meant to be played through me. And I knew without a doubt that the moment I committed to this journey of becoming an artist, I would be home. And not home as an idea, but home in my body, home in my heart, home in the frequency of this heart and in the frequency of my soul. I knew that if I allowed myself to live from that place, I would be the happiest version of myself. And that is how these dark nights of the soul and difficult processes and the years of confusion slowly revealed my purpose to me. And today that artistic journey shows up in creating songs and writing children's books. And I have so many songs coming through right now that I'm preparing for ceremony next week and that I hope I can share with you soon. And these are all expressions of something that has been waiting for a long time to move. A sacred expression of my truest energy and a way for me to receive my soul and express my soul. And it also shows up in my work as a teacher, training facilitators in the sacred work. And those that are also being called to be in service in their own way. And that takes me to the next part, because something I've noticed that feels important to name is that when we start opening this inner advent calendar of consciousness, and we begin to look behind these doors that shaped our conditioning and our trauma, we always start seeing more of the truth of who we are. And when that happens, there is often an urgency that arises, a feeling that says, I need to become this immediately. I need to live this now. I need to make this real right now. Yet the identity we already have, the tree of life that we've been cultivating, it didn't grow overnight. It took decades, 40 years, 50 years, or if you were called early, maybe 20 years. And that tree took time to form its roots, its branches, its shape. And it also takes time to change the soil it grows in. It takes time for new nutrients to reach the roots. And if you rush the process, you can actually damage the very life you are trying to grow. And I also know this impatience so well because after retreats and big realizations and new reference points, I often want to change everything instantly, as if I should have already done this yesterday. And over time, after working with this medicine and this path for more than a decade, I learned something important. If anything feels one step ahead of me, it's not for me. When I try to jump ahead, I lose my center, I lose my grace, I lose my ease. I lose my ability to really listen to what is here for me right now. And I start living in stress and urgency and feeling late and feeling behind. What I come to understand is that we are never too late for our own purpose. We're never too late for our life's calling, because it's why we're here. And we would definitely not be late if we are on the path with ayahuasca. We can't come late to our own life because we're already living it. But we can procrastinate, we can sabotage, we can hold on to things that no longer serves us, but we are still always in time. And that's when we enter the space of mastery and mystery together. Because especially after working with ayahuasca, we start to realize that there are more parts of us that we are usually shown. And when we receive all of these new reference points, it's almost like we can see ourselves as this huge, beautiful painting hanging on the wall, a true masterpiece made up of hundreds of puzzle pieces. And then we go into ceremony and discover one new puzzle piece, and suddenly we think, this is who I am right now. We feel like we need to throw away all the other pieces and become this one immediately. But that one piece is not the whole picture. It belongs to the larger masterpiece that is still being revealed. Because when we find a new reference point within our identity, within our spiritual journey, something very human happens. We feel like we need to focus only on that puzzle piece, and we feel like this is the truth, this is who I am, this is the direction, and everything else suddenly feels secondary or irrelevant. And in that focus, we forget that the rest of the puzzle pieces we already are. So often we become completely absorbed in this one new puzzle piece. It might be a memory that surfaces, or a trauma that finally makes sense, or a calling, or a part of the path. And we stay so close to our painting, we stop seeing the totality of it. We get so focused on the details. We don't step back. We don't widen our view. We don't look at the enormous, beautiful masterpiece that we already are. We get lost in the details. We get so close to our own self-image, to our own idea of who we are, that we forget to look at who we already became and who we are right now. And then we start noticing all of these puzzle pieces within us that have never really been honored. Maybe we are a musician or a singer or an artist. Maybe we are a healer or a space holder. Maybe there's a part of us that longs to be more adventurous or sensual, or travel the world, to explore, to take risk. Maybe there's a part of us that wants to start a family or slow down or to build something rooted and stable. All of these parts, they live inside of us at the same time. And this is usually a moment that we need to pause, because the question is no longer how do I honor this one new reference point, this one new puzzle piece I discovered. The deeper question becomes, how can I see the totality of who I am, the masterpiece, and how can I see the wholeness of my life? How can I find a way to honor all of it instead of exiling parts of myself that doesn't seem to fit the new story yet? How can it all belong? I worked with this very directly yesterday when a client in a one-on-one transformational process were working on exactly this part of the journey. She's someone who is stepping into leadership in this field after hiding herself for many decades. And she's one of my favorite type of people. She's one of the quiet ones, the hermits who carry so much wisdom but rarely show it. And we took a step back together and began to look at the masterpiece of who she already is. And I asked her, can you name all the parts of you that are alive within you right now? And she started sharing that she was a mom. She's an animal lover. She loves working with children, especially children on the spectrum. And she loves working with adults. She loves music. She's a designer, programmer. She plays songs. She's an editor. She loves creating experiences for people. And the list kept growing and growing. So many beautiful puzzle pieces of who she was right now that belonged to her masterpiece. And as she spoke, it became clearer that all of these pieces were not living together. Some of them were fragmented, some were placed on the left side of her painting, some on the right, some in the center, some were pushed to the edges, and some were lying on the ground, not placed anywhere yet, just waiting. So we stayed with that image, and then I asked her another question. How could all of these pieces belong to one masterpiece, to one picture, one painting that people could actually see and experience, not something that was hidden inside her mind? And then we went even deeper and looked at what path that can make her not only receive every part of herself, and honor every part of herself, but also be able to express all of her in a way that feels aligned and alive. And she didn't force an answer. She let it emerge. And what came true was very simple. She wanted to create beautiful daytime events for children, especially children on the spectrum, where they can move freely, listen to music, play, and feel safe being themselves. And since she loves animals, she wanted to weave them into the experience. There could be whale events or squirrel days, where children learn about squirrels and move like squirrels and play and laugh and explore. And she wanted the same structure for adults. She could read stories from shamanic literature about whale. She could invite them into breathwork inspired by whales. And as she spoke, something shifted in her body. She could suddenly see all the parts of her not competing with each other. They were united. The designer had a place, the programmer and developer had a place, the editor had a place. Her love for music had a space. Her ability to hold space for others had a space. None of the jobs that she had had before had to be thrown away. They were all instruments that she had learned to play. And now these instruments could be brought into this calling and into this experience so they could be of service. And this is one of the most beautiful aspects of integration work for me. So often we discover a new puzzle piece within ourselves. We think we need to abandon parts of ourselves that don't immediately fit in this new direction. But integration is not about exile. Integration is about the relationship to ourself from wholeness and integrity. It's about seeing how all of the parts of you can move together, even your slowest moving parts. And so many of us doing this work are part of something new that is emerging. There are only 4 million of us that have worked with ayahuasca. So we are a tiny family, but we're also not alone. And it also means that we are part of this new myth. We are bridging ordinary lives and our previous jobs with this mystical and new reality that is now forming. And that is why it's so important to ask, what if all of this within me could be of service? What if instead of seeing your life as 2 paths or separate paths that doesn't fit together, you start seeing them as one path with many instruments? Because there are so many instruments that we can pick up along the way. Skills, experiences, roles, identities. And at some point we realize they don't really define our entire path. They are tools for the path. They are not the destination. And any tools we find, from jobs to identity, we let ourselves rest there as if it is the final destination. And then we experience to be shaken to the core and our entire system breaks down. Yet if we move with the path, and we use and honor all of these instruments we have to play with, we are leading the symphony of life, and we are playing with the universe. Because you, my friend, you are the path and the masterpiece, even if you got stuck in the details of 1 or 2 puzzle pieces. And at the end of the day, this journey is about falling in love with this process and path that you are already on. Most of the time, the reason we want to throw away certain puzzle pieces of ourselves is because they represent pain or effort, or they represent a part of our lives that no longer feels alive or aligned. But even those parts, they taught us something. And they gave us instruments that we can still use. I know for myself that I would probably never sign up to the puzzle pieces of my childhood again. But now they are beautifully woven into my path and they no longer hurt. They have taught me to play on instruments of healing and respect and compassion that I would probably never have picked up or understood without these experiences. Right now, they are some of my most valuable teachers and allies on this path. And when we make these adjustments and we connect deeply within, we can allow ourselves to see the full masterpiece of who we are. And something begins to shift on the outside as well. The inner image starts to be reflected on the outside, and the life around us begins to mirror the wholeness we are learning to embody. And to summarize, I want to share very shortly the 5 reference points that are very important to know, because they will come when you are on this path with ayahuasca. And the first one that I touched on was the spiritual reference points. One of the strongest experiences I had with ayahuasca happened last summer when something inside of me finally shifted around my relationship with the divine. I realized very clearly that the spirit and the divine did not hate me, did not see me as broken or wrong, and therefore send me into painful childhood. Instead, I saw that the divine trusted me. It trusted my light, it trusted my life, It trusted that I could learn what I needed to learn, that I could walk through what I had to walk through and still find my way back into the light. And that realization created a completely new reference point inside of me within my spirituality. I didn't even know that I had a spiritual shame that I carried for so long, connected to ancestral shame or being gay, and the belief that something was wrong with me at a soul level, and that just dissolved. The story of my childhood shifted from punishment and karma into meaning as well. Not in a way that made it easy or justified, but a way that allowed grace to enter where there had only been blame and shame. And that opened a deeper connection with the divine that I had never known before. It reorganized my entire spiritual self and life. I was no longer a soul to be punished with karma, but a soul that experienced a difficult childhood because the divine trusted me. It trusted that I could carry the light through this experience. It trusted that I had what it took to have a difficult experience in the dark and still know my own light. Then we have emotional reference points, because other times the reference points are completely and purely emotional. I remember one ceremony where I found myself jumping from mat to mat within the ceremony room, screaming and dancing of pure joy. The kind of joy that you can only see children having these days, or a dog if you have a dog. This kind of joy that moves through the body without any effort. And in that moment, I realized I had found a new reference point in my body emotionally that I lost somewhere in childhood. I'd forgotten how real, pure joy felt like. And as an adult, I didn't have access to that place anymore. And I remember thinking, can I actually feel this type of joy in my daily life? Is it possible? And now, sometimes I experience what I called happiness attacks. I literally am just shaking with happiness and laughing and singing for no reason at all. So I found this new anchor in joy that is alive inside of me and also very accessible. And that reference point changed how I understand my emotional life. It's no longer what comes after anxiety and stress. Joy comes first because joy is who I am. Then we have spiritual reference points. And as I mentioned in a control group with ayahuasca drinkers, in one group 30%, another group 60% of the participants described themselves as spiritual after working with ayahuasca, even though they did not believe in God or spirit or anything before they had a cup of ayahuasca. And imagine the shift and that new reference point, never believing in God or spirit, and then one cup later actually meeting the divine and being a believer. That's a powerful shift that really reorganizes your life and your existence. And that's the power this medicine brings. And then there are also physical reference points. And you probably experienced this in ayahuasca, where you have a new experience and understanding of your body, what your body needs, how to heal your gut, how to heal your anxiety, how to take care of yourself on a physical level. And then we have the mental reference points, where suddenly we find a new belief or a mental framework. Maybe we shifted from thinking I'm the unluckiest person in the world or I'm not worthy to simply knowing our true worth. And a new reference point mentally that transforms a deep negative unconscious belief can drastically change the way we see ourselves in our life. So that are all the most common new reference points that we can find. And I hope this was helpful for you where you are on your journey. And before I close this week's episode, I want to say thank you. In just 3 months, this podcast has received close to over 700 hours of listening time. More than 3,000 people have listened, and that has meant so much to me. I was really scared about starting this podcast and sharing so many personal stories, so I didn't want to promote it. And you have found it by yourself because you were walking on the same path as me. And I am bowing in awe of meeting you here. It's an honor to share this journey with you, my friend, and to speak into this space of deep transformation and deep remembering together. I'm also so curious about what are some of the new reference points and puzzle pieces you have found on this path. What did you touch that you didn't know existed before? What new puzzle piece showed itself to you that you're now learning how to integrate into the life you're living? I would love if you could share with me in the comments on YouTube or Spotify. And if you have the time, please leave a review on the platform you're on. It helps me see that I'm here with you on this journey, and it also helps other people to find this podcast as well. Gratitude for you, my friend, and for the courage you have to truly heal and transform with our shared teacher, grandmother ayahuasca. That's what I got for you this week, my friend. And if you feel called to go deeper into your own integration work, I offer 3 journeys. I lead an integration circle for people walking this path with ayahuasca, and I just completed finishing a 6-month integration circle with therapists, coaches, retreat facilitators, and those that are going deep on this journey. You can sign up at davidvox.com. And when you're ready for the second journey, that's the celebration circle. It is 6 months of celebrating your life and your gifts. And the first reaction many people have is, why on earth would I want to do that? And the answer is quite simple. How you get there is how you will be there. If you are constantly healing and hustling and hiding and performing or proving, do you think that once you arrive there, you will suddenly feel free? Because I see that waiting to celebrate until after you achieved a new job, had more ayahuasca, or fixed your relationship is not the answer. Celebration is not the reward. It's the rehearsal. It's the daily act of self-respect, self-honor, and gratitude. It's the integration of who you already are. And when you learn to celebrate who you are now, every future version of you arrives already welcomed. When you learn to honor the ordinary, to bow to your own brilliance, to see your gifts and story as sacred, something inside of you shifts. You stop chasing your life and you start inhabiting it. You start living it. And every other part of your world begins to rise to meet you. Your relationship, your voice, your joy, even your income. Because when you live in celebration, you attract a life that celebrates you back. Every call shows you a different angle of who you are, what you project, what you hide, what you're not seeing. And it ends with the celebration ritual where 20 mirrors reflects your gifts back to you. Your only job is to receive. And maybe for the first time ever, you will see your full, faceted, multidimensional, gifted, abundant self. And then there's the third journey, Sacred Impact, and this is the one for leaders in the transformational and spiritual field who have this great vision, depth and sensitivity, but they struggle to bring their service into tangible form here on earth. I've guided and coached over 5,000 leaders in the last 15 years, helping them create platforms and offerings that comes from a real alignment. Something that honors their integrity, their sensitivity, their pacing. And for 6 months, we meet as a group of 10. We bring your platform, your ideas, your service, your medicine into structure, into form, and into a rhythm that actually grows the tree you've been cultivating and produces the fruit you've been trying to reach for years. It's planting these seeds in a container where they can grow and bringing it into resonance and clarity, and then watching the fruits of this sacred work manifest in a way that finally feels true to who you are. You can find more information about these 3 journeys on davidvox.com. See you next week, my friend.
Ayahuasca, curandera, es espíritu de abuela, es mi alma, es mi guía, camino con luz, pasería. Ayahuasca, curandera, es espíritu de abuela, es mi alma, es mi guía, camino con luz, pasería.